Welcome to the Humans of Hospitality podcast with me, Mark Cribb. Now, we are getting very, very close to the 4th of July, and this podcast is coming out on Tuesday, the 23rd of June, the day that we are expecting Boris Johnson to confirm the 4th as the industry reopen date, and hopefully even a drop in the 2-metre rule. Now, for many of you listening to this, we will already know the outcome of that, but with bated breath, I will leave it at that and get on with today's episode. Now, about 10 days or so ago, I was lucky enough to meet Kris, Gumbrell, Chief Executive of Brewhouse and Kitchen, and I met him at my restaurant during lockdown. Now, Kris's name has come up a number of times with various people that I've chatted to, and he runs a couple of awesome local venues in my hometown of Bournemouth, but I did not realise that we live only a couple of miles from each other until very recently. Now, Kris is a very experienced operator who has had both a successful corporate as well as a more entrepreneurial career in hospitality. We briefly touched on Kris's earlier career, but spent more time chewing the fat on a broad range of hospitality topics. From EIS funding schemes and some great perspectives on why debt is quite often not the answer, particularly relevant since the government are constantly banging on that debt is the incredible opportunity they have created for our sector and others through the CBILS process. We also have a great conversation around hospitality as part of the rejuvenation and placemaking of towns and cities. Quite often, they are the vibrancy and the lifeblood an area needs as a catalyst for investment and regeneration. Yet all too often, with high rents and taxes, such important businesses are often only marginally viable. Something surely that has to change post-COVID. Now, Kris has some excellent creative thoughts on rent negotiations and how thinking outside the box and looking for win-win opportunities between the two parties can often lead to some very interesting solutions. And Kris is also planning a slow and steady reopening, testing and learning as he and the team go with some of their larger, more spacious garden venues. All in all, chatting to Kris was an utter pleasure, and I'll certainly be meeting up with him for an icy cold beer and another chat in a few months to see how he and Brewhouse and Kitchen are performing. Now, before I go, you know the drill. If you're a regular listener enjoying the podcast, I would really appreciate your support. Any money that you can donate via our Patreon page goes on to hosting fees, technical kit, and fundamentally working to get a heap of awesome guests on the show so that you can listen every week for free. So if you fancy buying me a thank you beer and offering your support, head over to humansofhospitality.co.uk/donate. Thank you and enjoy the chat. Kris Gumbrell, Chief Executive of Brewhouse and Kitchen, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Nice
Hugely appreciated. Well, you say nice to be here, and actually, so this is the first one I've done face-to-face for about 3 months, I suppose, because I've had to do them all remotely, obviously, because we are still, just to date this, we are still in pandemic land. But luckily, I didn't know you were so local, but we are sat on the terrace of Urban Reef, my restaurant, and if you can hear some noise in the background, that is actually the ocean, isn't it? So it probably genuinely is a pleasure. It's certainly, I've even got a beer, Kris.
Absolutely beautiful. I've got a coffee. How sad is that? So,
Well,
but nicely socially distanced as well, just in case anybody's concerned out there.
Yeah, we're so socially distanced. We've got a terrace that would probably sit about 150 people, and we've got it to ourselves, haven't we?
Yeah, the way of things, unfortunately, at the moment.
Yeah, we're going to have some very jealous people looking up at us, wondering what on earth we did. I came up here with my wife and kids last week in the heat wave, and had some pizza, and my wife just felt terrible about even sitting up here because so many people are looking at us. Oh, I can imagine, I was like, if they want to spend over £1 million on a restaurant, they can come up. In fact, they can buy it at a very good deal now. And they can come and say, I'm not going to feel guilty for sitting on my own terrace on my Todd,
absolutely, and
having a beer and a pizza, which was nice. So, right. So, for people who don't know you, you've had a sort of fairly distinguished or long. I saw you'd won a lifetime achievement award the other day, and I thought that's a bit early, surely. But you've been,
I know. 53. Yeah, I got the Industry Lifetime Achievement Award for in October last year. So that was the NITA Awards. Yeah, it's the Frank and Knowles Award for Lifetime Achievement in the industry. So
does that mean you're supposed to retire now, or are you allowed
yeah, well,
to
that was the thing.
On?
I've dubbed it in the house as officially the Old Duffer Award because I followed David Bruce, who's the guy who invented the Firkine pub chain, West Berkshire Brewery, Capital Pub Company. So I know David well; he's a good pal, and Ian Payne, who heads up Stonegate, and Tim Martin at Wetherspoons. So I was the fourth person to get it. So and I got this watch, which I'm wearing now very proudly. Excellent. So it was just very nice.
Okay.
But I think it's probably because I've got a bit of a big mouth that I got it. But I think I've been quite challenging in the last 12 months, really, because I try and help UK hospitality as best I can and try and do a lot for the sector where I can. So there's an element of that, I think, and obviously as well what we've done with apprenticeships, which is very close to our hearts within Brewhouse and Kitchen right now. Yeah. So very honoured, very humbled, don't deserve it. I could list you 10 people at the drop of a hat who deserve it more than I did, but it was very nice.
Excellent. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
So for people that don't know, Brewhouse and Kitchen started it in 2012, and within 5 years you had 21 venues. That doesn't happen by accident, does it? You're clearly an experienced operator. Can you just give a little potted history of your background, and then what's Brewhouse?
Right. I mean, we worked out this year. It is 31 years this year. So since I left Bournemouth University, or Dorset Institute of Higher Education, as it was. So. I'm from Cardiff and came down here, fell in love with the place, went to uni, spent probably too long working for big brewers, if I'm truthful, till I was 40 years old. I only had 3 bosses, really, or 3 companies, which was Bass and Green King and S&N. Had a great job for Scottish and Newcastle for 2 years, opening pubs and bars in foreign markets as part of their beer export arm. So I had this kind of stuffy career in big brewers where you kind of, you get your company car and your suit and your pager. In those days there was no such thing as mobile phones, and you run around trying to be a good boy and working to your KPIs and running everything as per the concept. And I had 2 years just working purely with entrepreneurs all over the world. So one of the best things I did was go to New York with David Bruce, who was the chap who founded Firkin pub chain, Slug and Lettuce. He was involved in it at the very early stages, and he had multiple investments in the US market. So David took me to New York, and it was a real transformational week, because that was in 1998, and I got taken to Brooklyn Brewery. He was a founding investor of Brooklyn Brewery, and I came back having worked for stuffy old brewers for years, thinking beer will change, and beer, boy, has it changed in the last 10 years. So wind the clock forward, picked up a group of freeholds that were struggling in London about must be 13 years ago now. Did a turnaround on those and sold them, had a successful out on those. And one of the things we did was some very early stage unbranded Brewhouse and Kitchen type developments. We did two brew pubs, and we saw the experience market growing, we saw the craft beer market growing, and also we saw that service was going to be far more important than it ever was before. And so myself and an old friend of mine became business partners, Simon Bunn, and we created Brewhouse and Kitchen, and we opened our first site in 2013. Wind the clock forward, we have 22 sites, hopefully soon to be 23 if we can get back on site. And it's been a ride.
Yeah, that's a
it's
good
fair to say.
Yeah, well, congratulations, and well done for making that so short. I was in danger there, especially with the Lifetime Achievement Award, of that being at least 45 minutes.
Oh no, there's nothing behind it all. I'm as shallow as they come, Mark. I tell you, there's not much to talk about.
Yeah. And along the way there, you became pretty savvy at funding, because you raised EIS funding.
Yeah, I use Enterprise Investment Scheme funds. Yeah,
you see a lot now about sort of crowdfunding and other mechanisms. Why was that so useful?
I think it's a win-win. A good thing that there's the Enterprise Investment Scheme for us. I mean, the first company I took over was a company that was in a bit of distress, but it had been funded up by Enterprise Investment Schemes. And of course, you talk to investors, and what was interesting is how really kind of unconcerned most of the investors actually were, even though you actually think, well, this is a great model because people get a tax break from the cash that they put in off their next tax bill. So you put 10,000 quid into an EIS company, then you're going to get 3,000 quid off your next tax bill if you're a higher rate taxpayer. When the company exits and makes a gain, it's capital gains tax free. If it loses and the share price collapses, you get full tax relief down to 50p in the pound. So it's like a no-brainer for an investor. And the problem with the no-brainers is that people don't get that passionate about them when they don't work. Whereas when you put your own money in and there are no tax breaks and you are subject to capital gains tax, you push a bit harder. So that was quite an interesting dynamic. And I thought, actually, if you could get all of the EIS cash and really look after it, and work closely with those shareholders, you can get a lot more done. So I kind of learned that with the first company. We've raised several EIS and venture capital trust funds since, and we've got a core business called Brewhouse and Kitchen Limited, and when we have 3 other businesses that we franchise into, I have a stake in those businesses as well, and we've been able to really push quite hard to have a franchise business and a core business, and it's worked really well.
Nice.
Really, really well. And of course, the franchise model has been good because we run and operate a brand, so there's a significant change in the model. And I think what's a shame, and I've been talking to various parties. Our auditors are Safri's, they've been lobbying for us with the Treasury, UK Hospitality have been lobbying, is that now with what we're all experiencing with the pandemic, enterprise investment schemes are a perfect way for people to support hospitality businesses without us as hospitality operators having to be relied on loans. I get very agitated when I hear politicians immediately defer to the fact that they've made so much debt available. Debt is debt. At the end of the day, whichever way you dress it up, debt is debt. And at the end of the day, we have a crisis situation. We can ladle on as much debt as we want now to companies just to keep them alive. We can furlough their teams. But at some point, hospitality needs to emerge from where we are now, be able to stand on its own 2 feet, pay its team without requiring furlough, service its debt, and pay all the other bills like, business rates, which are, we all know are far too high and have been far too high for far too long. PRS, which seems to go up every year for no reason, and that's just extortionate now. And bid fees. Somebody tells me what bid fees are all about. I have no idea. Looking at what bids do for the money. So I get it is going to be quite tough and quite distressing for hospitality for quite some time. Now, Enterprise Investment Scheme allows existing investors to follow their money and support and prop up those businesses through the equity route. And all the government's got to do is support some of that funding through a tax break, which is down the road. Again, it's down the road, so it's not an immediate cash call on the government or the banks. So I think, the government are missing a really big trick here and a really big opportunity. I don't want state handouts. No hospitality operator wants state handouts. We love standing on our 2 feet. We always put more in than we take out. And I was asked recently how I felt about the furlough scheme and the billions that it's costing. And I look at the 38 billion quid we pay in every single year in hospitality into the system. And we see other industries get bailed out and supported periodically outside of this current crisis. We never ask for anything. We get kicked and beaten and slashed and taxed to the hilt and regulated and licensed. And we never, ever get a break. And now we're getting a break and we really appreciate it. But it's not just about giving us debt and telling us that all our problems will be fixed by having access to more debt. It's not really fixing the problem. It's just storing up the problems and making them bigger down the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think enterprise investment schemes, I think have got a really big role to play. SEIS schemes, the rules have been tightened and tightened and tightened over the years to really prevent restaurants and bars and pubs getting access to enterprise investment scheme money. And the other good thing about EIS is they could be deployed so much more effectively in local communities to get their pubs, bars and restaurants open. It's a really great way for communities to buy into the sector and invest into their local businesses in a really efficient way that is a win-win for everybody. Yeah. You still have to write a business plan, and you still have to respect, honour and deliver value to your shareholders. I spent a good deal of time of what I've been doing in the last 12 weeks talking to shareholders, and they got a letter yesterday from us, and that's the 6th letter I think we've sent out to shareholders now since April, just to tell them what we're doing and give them that support. So I think enterprise investment schemes are one good way, but there are numerous good ways that we can actually support. One of the interesting things about EIS is the rules changed in 2015, and we think that was clearly part of a big compliance push by David Cameron going into the Brexit vote. We had the change in the Finance Act, and that really constrained us by capping off the amount of money that we could raise, really tightening up on the types and styles of trading businesses that EIS could be applied to. Now that was to conform with European regulations. Now we're leaving Europe, and not something I personally agree with, but look, we're going and that's it, and we've just got to make the best of it. But what a great opportunity to all review all the rules and start again and wipe the slate clean and look at how the state, through taxation, can support business investment. It's so easy.
Are the government listening? I know.
I think they are. The feedback we got from the Treasury is very good. I think, to be fair to the guys at UK Hospitality, they're fighting a million battles at the moment.
They are. Yeah, Kate's been on the podcast a few weeks ago. Actually, she's a force to be reckoned with.
She is. She's amazing. And you do. I'm just been so impressed by them, to be honest. And we're their second office as well. Two of the guys who work for UK Hospitality kind of use us as a bit of an office because they live near one of our sites. So we see them a lot, and I'm always boring them with your ideas. My ideas and things. But they are very, very patient and very supportive. But this is a fairly pivotal moment. I think you and I are waiting this week really to see what comes out. You can't help but feel they're making up as they go along a little bit. And
yeah. Although I haven't read, so UK Hospitality put a 75-page proposal together, I think, with regards to reopening, didn't they? Have you read that?
I've been through in summary. I'll let them. My guys are using it as part of our operations plan. So
it sounded
I haven't read
comprehensive
75 pages.
I think
everybody thinks I've been lying on a beach for 12 weeks. I've never worked my ass off so much as I have in the last 12 weeks, you know, and a lot of it doing stuff that you wish you got to sooner, you know. But one thing is, I haven't read a 75-page report. I've submitted our ideas as part of the canvassing process that the UK hospitality went through. And on balance, we're getting, I think we're getting good representation. People think that people know what we're about now. I think politicians know what they're about. I think Kate walks a very fine line when probably going into meetings where she wants to scream at times, coming out of those meetings with politicians, but bites her lip, is incredibly diplomatic, incredibly balanced, and has done a good job of representing our sector. Yeah. And I think then you can leave the more antagonising elements of people who shout, not that I've done much of that, but I think you can leave that to other people to do. I think Kate's got to go in and win hearts and minds. Really.
Yeah, I think you've always got to try and open doors, not close doors, basically, and that's the challenge. I think when you're dealing with public authorities, is that there's no point. There's no point just throwing things until they just shut the doors. Because love them or loathe them, at the end of the day, you have got to work with them. Basically.
Absolutely.
So I do think there seems to be an opportunity for hospitality coming off the back of this. A little bit like people falling back in love with the NHS, maybe, and appreciating what they do. Hospitality has held its head quite high in the last few months, with its charitable support, feeding key workers, just getting the recognition about being the third biggest employer in the country. Do you feel like it feels like a more, I don't know, a better represented sector now than it did 3 months ago? Or?
I think it has. I think it's. I think we do what we do. I mean, first, if you take hospitality as an entity that we both work in, I think we've always been very fraternal, very collegiate. Even though we compete with each other, I've got friends who work in retail, and it's they're at each other's throats. I mean, even things like award dinners and things like that. Apparently, it's pretty grim and fierce, and it's very, very competitive in the retail sector. But we're just not like that. When we get together, when we band together, we're all very good. But I think it's because of the nature of our work, the numbers of people that we employ, and the nature of being hospitality people is that we want to be. The sort of kinship of being in our business, this sort of fraternal element of being in our business is so important. And I think people are now looking at us under distress and realising what they could potentially lose as well. I mean, everybody, you talk to any politician and they if you say, I want, support your pubs in the community, they will say yes in a heartbeat. But they'll still sign off a beer duty increase, or they'll still sign off a business rates increase, or they'll, or they'll regulate, or they'll beat you up for whatever you've decided to do on tips or implementation of minimum wage. So the kind of politicians want it both ways. And I think I always say pubs are like children. They sometimes need to be seen but not heard. I spent many years as working for Green King. I was a tenanted director, and we'd have 2 or 3 pubs in a village, and you knew one of the pubs had to close, and we'd be in sort of East Anglia or Oxfordshire where we had big presence, and you'd get all the angry letters and the village hall meetings, and you'd be there and saying, like, we've got the umpteenth tenant going through this site, and we're now on free rent and support, and there's somebody else who's yet to go bust or need to come out of the site, and people used to go mad. And then I always remember my old boss, who was brilliant, asked a holding manager to keep a table, a ledger of everybody in the village who used that pub in readiness for one of those meetings, and it was a very thin list. Yeah. And as soon as people started asking questions, he asked for their name first so he could tick them off the list. He didn't give any questions in that village hall meeting, and I think that goes down to the fact that sometimes people will say they love pubs, a bit like post offices as well. They'll say they love pubs and they want their local pubs to be supported, but will they use them? Will they come out and really support their pubs? And I think this has focused people to think, actually, we could lose them now. And I think we probably are going to lose them. I think whatever happens in the next couple of weeks and months, I think, there are pubs out there and restaurants and bars that will never reopen. And that is a terrible, terrible tragedy, because, we're employing 1 million people. But what's left, people really need to get behind. And when they come in, if you're coming in for a pint with your paper, don't sit on a table of 6 and get all grumpy if you're asked to move. We are going to be so stretched. We've got to work to so many new guidelines, which will be new to our teams and new to us as management, and new to guests as well. And we've all got to work together. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they said he had a real fear when he opens of somebody filming some kind of breach of the guidelines and putting it on social media, and then you're going to get mauled and attacked. And everything else.
Yeah, we put it out. Even with opening, the wood oven next door to where we are now, which over the heat waves had a it's been really busy, and there was a lot of negative publicity, which you all have seen locally about the state of the beaches and how busy they were and how many people coming down. And you do feel like we work in hospitality because fundamentally we want to make people happy. We want to look after them, and we want to provide a service. Yes, we've got to make money, but very rarely do people wake up in the morning in hospitality and start with money. They start with how can we do better today? How can we look after?
And they
more
apply
people?
Supermarket maths to us, don't they? People say, but you're charging £10 for a burger, and you get applied that supermarket maths. I can go to Aldi and buy a burger for this X amount. I put a bun with it, and you're thinking, you show them the business rates bill. That's the first one, and then show them the PRS and the bid fees and then the wage bill.
Yeah. I've always said anybody who wants to go through our accounts, I've always said, look, to anybody complaining about price, send them down to me.
We spend about 400 grand a year on training.
Yeah.
We've spent a fortune on training while I'm in furlough, because we're so concerned about people's welfare whilst they're furloughed. So we've spent a huge amount in training, which I'm really pleased to do. I don't resent it. It's an investment, but there is so much more to it, and people's expectations are so much higher. The expectations on price are broadly flat to getting slightly lower, and I think we want to give people a great experience and good value for money, but now is it's a clarion call really for us to say, look, you've got to support your local restaurant, bar, pub now, because they're going to need it. And when you come in, be a bit patient, be a little bit understanding. If you've got a problem, if you see something that's not appropriate, discuss it with the management, because we're all still learning. Now, don't start sticking it on social media and it gets shared by thousands, and look how clever
and
you
it's
are.
somebody's
Well done,
livelihood. Well, I mean, it's just the extension of TripAdvisor, isn't it? Is that people don't realise the amount of work and effort and the human aspect of what's going on.
Oh, it can destroy a team. Absolutely.
And it will destroy a team, destroy a business. It's like with us. People. Some people will complain about us opening, and I'm like, look, we're not. We're not owned by a board of directors in London with millions of pounds of investment. It's like, I will lose my house unless I find a way to navigate through this. That's the reality of where we're at. What's frustrating is that everybody, says, there'll be supportive and they'll help, and then you look at the size of the queues for the McDonald's drive-through in the last 10 days since they reopened. A 2-hour wait for I was going to swear then about that, but I don't want to get sued. And then I've opened the Urban Beach as a drive-through on a Friday and Saturday night, only for sort of 7 hours a weekend, and you look at how hard it is to get people to come out and buy some food there. And people say one thing, like you said, with the village pub and stuff.
And I'm not being critical of customers. I just wanted people to take, if you can't
do it consciously.
I've had this. I gave evidence at a parliamentary hearing last year about the pub sector.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting when you really eyeball MPs, who it's the all-party parliamentary beer group anyway. So it's the pub and beer group. The guys who they're on side anyway. But how much do you really care? How much do you really, really care about our sector? Because, there's lots of fine words about how people want to support us and what they want to do for pubs, restaurants, bars. I keep talking about pubs. And actually what gets delivered in reality. And, we are big. And I think what's been brilliant in the last couple of years with the old ALMR getting together with the Restaurant Association, the nightclub guys, and us forming UK Hospitality, is that we can look anybody in the eye and say we're the third largest employer in the UK, we're the third largest sector, our taxation is through the roof. I mean, 38 billion quid every single year going into the system. We take nothing, we give everything. We have been responsible. Look at the CapEx that goes on within our sector. You get a derelict town centre, you get an old docks that's dirty, dark and undeveloped. You get any kind of, you take the high streets now, what's happening in the high streets, and you hear it time and time again. I hear it from MPs, even from local councillors, even down here, is that leisure will pick up the slack. They will pick up the space, and we won't anymore. No. We won't. And you've got to look after the leisure you've got. And you mentioned earlier on about, directors in London. I mean, you've got big companies now who are wobbling. Big firms who are wobbling like mad. And I'm not going to mention any names there, but there's going to be some real eye-opening things happening in the next couple of weeks. We are getting close to the rent quarter.
We are. And as JD would say, it's the imminent implosion of our sector.
Absolutely.
And it is frustrating because the thing is about hospitality is that it is placemaking. We're sat here, aren't we? This beach would not be the same without some sort of bar where you can sit at the back of it and grab a coffee and grab a beer.
Absolutely.
Town centres, we regenerate areas with it. For me, the point of being on planet Earth is to spend time with friends and family over some food or over a drink. It's the point behind existence, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Surely it's more exciting than nipping into a shop or nipping into a bank or doing everything online. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
You would hope that you can't do what we do online.
You would.
Now, but again, why should we pay 12% of the business rate to take on the high street, but be less than 5% of the revenue?
don't know, Chris. It sounds
so why does that happen? Why does that happen? You know, we're the horse that's going to win the race if you back us now and you give us the support now. We're going to be able to step into that space on the high streets, along with a lot of other planning challenges around, you know, bringing residential. I mean, I keep getting asked why, you know, we've got a couple of high street sites and they worry me. They do worry me at times. But I'm convinced that high streets will be reclaimed into residential, and high streets will be communities in the next 10 or 15 years' time, when reality sets in. But even when you sit at a local level and you listen to councillors talk about frustrations with planning teams who are so hung up on zoning, about leisure is here and retail has to be there, and, you know, and listed buildings officers, you know, this postcards from the past attitude that we have around. I mean, I've had so many battles with listed buildings officers, and I use the square wheel analogy. You know, he said they are happy to keep a wheel square because it's always been square, but the square wheel is not fit for purpose. And we had it in Bournemouth Town Centre, you know, battling about bloody fireplaces. I mean, given my time again on that site, I probably wouldn't have done that development and spent the money that we spent and created the jobs we created because we compromised too much with listed buildings. We should have walked away from the site. And I've learned that lesson, and I will walk away again because the buildings, and that is going to be a massive challenge coming into the high streets, is listed buildings are going to have to suck it up and keep quiet and listen to what the people who understand how the future is going to look and go with that, because otherwise we're going to try and hang on to the past, and these buildings, these shops are going to be boarded up and closed down, and they will fall apart and they will change hands, and in the end they will collapse. And we've got to be more progressive in our thinking.
Is that because the one in the town centre, the sort of restrictions were prohibitive to making it an effective space?
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of battles about fireplaces that don't work and things like that. Haven't worked for years, but want to keep the fireplaces in place and locations of staircases. And actually, I could have opened up that site so much. I mean, it's one example. I could list you several examples. I mean, I've been, you know, told to keep certain staircases in place, but block up the top, so you have a fireplace that goes nowhere. And I've walked around and you know, with listed buildings officers start photographing everything, and they say, well, I want to get a record of all of this, and you suddenly feel terrified of investing in your business, you know.
You often feel like their job is to make it harder rather than simpler.
Well, yeah, I mean, as I said, listen, you know, we all, you know, we're members of the National Trust, and I love, you know, you love the history and of this country and what we've done, but if we try, you cannot change what is happening right now by hanging onto the buildings. We've got to allow these buildings to adapt and change. And I, you know, is planning policy fit for purpose, or is planning, you know, and actually a planner's fit for purpose sometimes, you know, particularly where you're dealing with planners who are part-time, and you know, or you hear that they're working as consultants in another borough. How does that work?
And my problem with planning consultants all too often is that it's based purely on what they like or what they don't like, and I'm like, how is that relevant? I had problems in my house, and I was like, you know, you're not going to live here. I'm going to live here. So just because you don't like it, I understand if it's part of planning regs or if there's an issue, but you don't like it, I'm like, don't come over. I had no plans on inviting you over for lunch on a regular basis.
I mean, we're writing the checks. I mean, we wouldn't write the checks unless we could see, and I'm a big believer in working with the sympathy of the building. What we've done at Southbourne, I think, is fantastic. You know, I think what we achieved at Southbourne, which interestingly, it wasn't a listed building, thankfully. Otherwise, probably would have walked away from that one. It'd still be boarded up.
Well, I was going to say, so Southbourne, I wanted to talk to you about that, even if we weren't having a podcast, because that was an amazing space. It had an amazing history. I used to go there as a, you know, sort of 17-year-old, probably.
Steamhouse Rock Nights.
Yeah, exactly. The Rock Nights, and it was brilliant. And I looked around it because I was like, oh man, what an incredible space. So I went and looked around it. And there was a couple of things that I noticed. One, it was massive. You know, it was absolutely huge, and it really came to like sort of how big it was when you went upstairs. And it was something like 6 different flats, and they weren't like 1-bed flats. They were like 2, 3 bedroom flats. I fell through the floorboards. I really wanted to get that site because it's an amazing space. But I thought, my God, you know, you're going to need a big pot of cash to get that back open. And it looked like it needed a lot of work. So, yeah, how did you come about getting that one? And was it as eye-wateringly expensive as I thought it would?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, good. Because otherwise I wanted it.
Yeah, it was a good sort of. I think we spent more than probably 2.5 times what we thought it was going to cost us.
Right.
In the end, but we fell in love with the building, and the thing is, living down here as well. I mean, the history of the site is the site was part of a big property estate where a big pub company had obviously done an opco-propco structuring a few years ago. So the freehold was owned by a company that was, you know, they just owned lots of pubs. And they had sublet the pub to a pub company, a tied lease pub company. And the keys had been thrown back on that site back in 2008.
It was a ridiculous lease as well, wasn't it? It was really expensive.
Yeah, well, what was happening is that the passing rent from the pub company, well, I can't say too much other than the fact the passing rent from the pub company to the to the freehold owner was eye-watering.
Yeah, it was.
To put it, was absolutely eye-watering.
Yeah.
So, and of course, you do think, well, I know who signed that agreement, but that's another story. Yeah. I put it to them once over lunch, and they decided not to sit with me after the main course. But so what we did, we just negotiated a purchase price on the freehold, and then we negotiated a reverse premium, which is effectively where a tenant is so hamstrung by their lease, they have to pay a premium. And I've done 2 of these actually, where I've had pubcos pay me to walk away from head leases, which is quite useful. Yeah. And so it kind of underwrote the cost a little bit. It kind of broadly underwrites the freehold acquisition really to a degree. You wonder why they didn't do the deal, but I just had this feeling that, we knew we had a great community to work with in Southbourne, and it is a fantastic community.
It is.
And we knew we had a good community to work with. You could see the direction of travel in Southbourne with, what was happening there already with people like David and Nicola down at the White Bear, the chap who's done Larder House, even loungers going in there. You just think, there's a real good feeling about this. The property looked really underpriced, and you're thinking, this place is going to go nuts. You could just feel it. I don't know what it was. And of course, when you're running a big pub company at the other side of the country, you don't know those things. So living down here, I just thought, so everybody,
it was a great
and of course it was falling down. I knew there was a lot of emotion. I remember going to the site when I was a student, getting, slaughtered there. So you kind of remember it all, and everybody was very fond of it. And as soon as we announced that we bought it, it just went mad.
Yeah,
it just went absolutely, massive. I mean, and I did a walk around for the Echo as well, and it was quite breathtaking how bad it was. It really was.
It really did need some
love. Well, you walked around. I mean, the fact there was 3 ceilings in some parts of it, different ceilings, and of course. I mean, now we've now got provisional plans to turn it back into a hotel upstairs. Yeah. So we've got 3 holiday flats at the moment, plus 2 other flats, plus loads of accommodation for staff and everything else. So we got plans to turn it. Probably next year now. We would have started it this year. We'll probably go for it next year.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
I mean, it's been wonderful. And we did the final part of the current building back last year, where we converted the garages at the back into function and event space. Yeah. So it's been good. But we prided ourselves. 9 of our sites in the entire group were derelict, closed, or weren't pubs before.
Well, it was reinforcing the point that we were chatting about, which was, the number of people here, even though I'm on the seafront, who think that I get some sort of council support to be here. They said, the council must be really helpful. They always help you. Even with rent negotiations at the moment with being closed, they must be great. It must be really good having the council as a landlord. And there's just this presumption that you're part of the placemaking. It's like, we only come here. You've really transformed Boscombe. It was known as a bit of a shithole. And
you have.
Yeah, but you get the opposite to support. I get on well with them now. They've had our challenges historically, but you certainly don't get any financial support, even if you get a few more claps and cheers now. But it's the same as you were saying. You get taxed in the same way that you wouldn't have had any support with that building. But not only are they not being supportive, they're potentially making it harder. But what you did there helped transform Southbourne, because that was a big property. It was derelict for years. It looked a mess. You lifted, the high street by renovating it, and that's
the estate agent said to us
it
was the single biggest question they had about the high street.
Yeah.
And when we actually announced that we bought it, the first thing that we did was rustle up visuals of the outside, because it was such a problem to the estate agents in the area. They were asking us to say, what's it going to look like, so I said, there you go, and I just give them one of those isometric visuals, the flowers and the baskets and the sign. So there you go, show them that, it will look like that eventually. Actually, we turned it around much quicker than I thought. I think it was a 9-month project, but it was $2 million we spent on it.
Yeah, well, that's
developing it. So that was a big ticket, big number, a real ballsy call for us.
It was,
but I'm not going to.
It was fairly early, was it? What number was that in your? 21?
Oh God, it was like 7 or 8, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember it being.
We exploded in 2015, 16. We just went nuts.
Yeah. But I was gutted that you'd got it, because I really wanted it, but I was so pleased you got it, because I knew that I couldn't afford it and it was going to be expensive. So I'm quite pleased it was a good. That's kind of pretty much what.
It was a big roll of the dice, and my business partner, who runs all the property side, Simon, we said, cost has gone up again, and you just go, okay, what have we found? And he said, well, they stole all the lead off the roof. Somebody's nicked all the lead off the roof, so we're going to effectively need to replace the roof. And that building is a monster.
It's huge.
So we had to literally, you could stand, and then we realised all the floors were rotten upstairs. So you and I, on viewings, I even took Kris Main, the councillor at the time, around the upstairs. It was condemned. We shouldn't have been up there in the front.
100%.
We couldn't even check the back of the building because it was so rotten. But basically, 500 quid's worth of lead going off the roof meant a 300 grand roof needed to be fitted.
Really. I'm just pleased that you did it, because what I thought is somebody's going to come and knock this down and rebuild its block of flats.
Well, it was an option.
So I'm just really pleased.
Yeah, I mean, look, I factored it in. And I thought, if this cost, what was most bizarre, I remember saying to myself, if this cost goes past 1.6 million, I'll just turn it into houses. Yeah. I'll just get planning for houses on it. In fact, it went over that in the end. But the good thing is, the pivotal point for us was when the locals started to get behind it. We went, this is going to be a big one. This is going to be really good for us. And it was, but we did it. Our first site was a derelict Wetherspoons pub. It was too small for them in Portsmouth. Our second site was an old Eldridge Pope pub on the Eldridge Pope Brewery development. That'd been shut for 3 years and was derelict. We remodelled that site. So we've always gone in and toughed it out and gone for stuff that we think it's not. It's not alchemy. We're not turning crap into gold. We're just going out there and looking for things that bigger companies missed. Yeah. And I remember I used to work for Green King. I know the Green King boys very well, and they acquired the company that we were buying the head lease from. I won't say who it was, but you can probably easily narrow it down. Ringing the property director, was a friend of mine, saying, "You're not going to take this deal off the table, are you?" And he said, "No." He said, "We looked at it." He said, "It's rubbish." And he said, "We've looked at the area, and we've looked at it on Google Maps." And I was thinking, great, great. Big companies do things that way. Yeah. They walk up and down the street on a computer, and they don't get the vibe, and they don't get the energy, and they don't talk to the community.
They don't remember going there when they were 18 and getting shit faced.
Yeah, exactly right. So, oh god, it was mad. I mean, I remember the first week we opened it, we just couldn't believe what was happening.
Yeah.
It was great, and it's still, and actually, I can announce today it will be the first pub to reopen.
Really?
Yeah, out of the whole of the UK for Brie and K. It's because we're all close to it. We know we have the following.
You're thirsty.
Well, yeah, because we're nervous, I mean, like all operators are. You'll be nervous. We're all nervous, aren't we? We're all thinking, well, how the hell is this going to go? What's going to happen? And we know we've got the space. Yeah. I've got an amazing GM in there, Doc, who's just a really experienced guy and very capable, and just very cool as well. He never panics, and he's always very. He'll probably want a pay increase if he listens to this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
but
they're not going to put anybody rubbish on your doorstep.
But he's super fit. He runs up and down here every day. You'll see him in a minute.
Yeah, excellent.
But
I'll ask
don't
him if
poach him.
I'll ask him if he wants a job. Yeah.
No, but I mean, the thing is, I've got a guy in there who's not going to panic as well, and we'll deal with people really well because we are worried. We are worried about what this is going to be like. But that will be the first one that will open, and yes, it's been a triumph for us. As actually the best returns always are. We tend to spend them obviously the most on the sites that are derelict or closed.
Yeah. Well, you're also known for predominantly being freehold, aren't you, rather than lease?
Yeah, we are 75% freehold.
And that's deliberate.
So
you must.
Yeah. Well, it's part of the. It's way if at the end of the day, if you want to raise money, investors want protection, and if you can give them a good brand, which I think we've got a decent brand, you've got a business that can grow and it has grown. You've got a business that's current and relevant. So whether it's craft beer. Our experience business is closing on £1 million a year just for beer masterclasses, gym masterclasses, brewing academy. So that we have a lot of innovation in that area, a huge amount of experience now. We're certainly in the drinks sector for experiences. We're the market leader now. So you can give all those investors tick, and then you can underpin it with freeholds.
Yeah, perfect.
It's a pretty good investment for people, and actually. I like freeholds. I'm not having many battles with landlords.
I was going to say, you must have given yourself a decent... you've been quite reasonable on rents in this closure period, haven't you?
I have to say, I've been watching all the dialogue, and you and I follow the same people, I'm sure, and I look at all the really valid opinions that are flying around. I also see a lot of rhetoric, and I think I can see things backfiring a little bit, and it worries me. And I've got a couple of retail leisure landlords. I've got 3 retail leisure development site landlords, and I've got a couple of private commercial landlords. I don't do pub co-leases. I'm not into that at all. And, I have to say, obviously the beer type for us is not relevant or interesting. But outside of that, there is no market for them. And if I put a pub co-lease into a group of pubs now, they're seen as a toxic pill, as a poison pill in a deal. So for me, and a lot of people out there will have a different view, but I don't support them now. And I wouldn't bring him in. And I'd speak as an ex-tenanted and lease director for Green King.
Right. Well, you know what you're talking about then.
So no, well, I just don't think the cake's big enough anymore. I think they just want too much.
Right.
And I feel very sorry because the tenants' costs have increased proportionately greater than the landlord's costs. All the landlord has seen in the last 10 years is lower interest rates.
Yeah.
and the tenant has had to suck up all the rest. So I don't get it anymore. And I said I speak from being on the other side of the fence. But no, I have to say, I've taken the attitude of you can get aggressive with landlords, you can be pointed, you can get emotional with landlords, and but they got people breathing down their necks. And I've tried to take a different. I did a deal last week with a landlord. I tried to take a different approach because he had something that I wanted, which was extra space, and he had something. He wanted something that I had, which is some capacity to pay some rent. And of course, we've got to be challenging about this thing, so we're not getting any income, and we're going to be spending probably the best part of 10,000 quid per site in terms of sanitising stations, screening, everything else, and we haven't had any revenue. I dread to think how many millions of pounds of revenue I've lost in the last 13 weeks.
Be a lot.
So yeah, and
especially
of course I've got, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good your bank covenants are. If you're not taking any money at all, you've got a problem. You've got to talk to your banks. So it is tough for everybody, but I've tried to be collaborative. And I've tried to listen to the landlord side of things as well, and I have to say, on balance, I'm very happy. We've got all sorts of mixture of different things going on. We've got enhanced deals, we've got the usual things where some people have said, well, we'll waive the rent, or we'll defer payments, or we'll give you breaks. But people have been more creative in some areas as well, and they've talked about giving you extra space and coming up with investment plans coming out of the back of this, and all sorts of other things. And I think you've got to write your own balanced scorecard. And I try not to listen to too much of the noise going on somewhere else, because they're expecting you to come at them with all of that. And I've had and I've said at one negotiation last week, so I'm not going to give you that. I'm going to give you something else to think about. And if you sit and think for long enough in any negotiation, you'll find things that work for you and things that work for them.
Yeah, it just feels like it needs to be shared, basically, doesn't it? You can't put 100% of the burden on
no,
the
and
tenant,
I haven't had one landlord try to do that. I haven't
good.
had one landlord try to do that at all. And I have to say, the most interesting one was TfL, who they came up with a blinding proposal, and we hadn't even gone to them. They were on our list of landlords to ring, and they just came up with something. We thought, wow, if we got that off everybody else, we'd be absolutely laughing.
That's good.
Which effectively isn't, I won't go into too much, but it was a great deal. It was a fairly recognised and a fact. But again, that's a public body now. People would supply the same principle. You'd say, well, surely the council are being sympathetic. Yeah. And down here, you can't say it. I will. I'm not a council tenant down here. I don't think they have been very sympathetic. I think they've just they've just seized up. They're just terrified of making any call either way down here.
We've got an unofficial truce, Chris. That's what we've got. We've got.
Is that what's happening?
Basically, I think for me, and not everybody would agree with this locally. Some people need clarity sooner, and I've not been desperate to do a deal, because I've been like, it's very hard to negotiate at the moment until we know what coming out the other side looks like. So you just touched on this, what is it going to be like? And for me, if I'm going to be closed, down here on the seafront, there is a very strong case to say that we shouldn't open until April next year. We should just skip the winter. But the difference between
how your number's going to look after November, after October. It's a waste of time down here.
Well, we run at a loss anyway in the winter, but normally we have the revenue from the summer to carry us through the winter. But absolutely, it makes sense to shut. The only reason we generally open is to keep the team employed, ready for the summer, but we can't afford to carry the team through this winter. So until we've got a bit more clarity, and maybe if we get to trade for July and August and it rains for 2 months, that's very different to having an absolutely stonking July and August. So personally, I've kind of been said, look, let's sit around a table over a coffee when you've got enough crap to be dealing with in the town hall at the moment. Yeah. We'll meet up at the end of the summer, we'll make a plan, and we'll see where we're
absolutely. And work out the win-wins.
And I don't know where we're at the moment.
Absolutely,
so I've been in no hurry to negotiate.
Yeah, no, you're right. I always think work out the win-wins. Look at things that they can give you which don't cost them that much, and look at the things that they really need. Because what I've learned as well, and I said I'm not going to go into too much detail, but when you get to a situation where you're talking to the MD of a very well-known retail leisure, the guy is talking about massive redundancies in his own team, keeping his investors at bank and his bankers at bay. The guy's got a world on his shoulders, and actually someone I agonised in one discussion, and we came up with what I thought was a really good plan. One thing, and only advice, you as I said, do your balanced scorecard. Look at all the things you want to achieve. Whether it's deferment of payments, whether you feel, because there is no added value that can come any other way, that maybe a waiver is the right thing to do. You've got to look at it in the context of how much rent you're paying. And I was talking to somebody last week who rang me for advice, and I said, when he told me what his rent is, I said, if I was you, man, I'd just pay your rent and shut your mouth, because that's an absolute bargain. Exactly. So don't put the guy under any pressure. If he gets external advice, you could be strung up at the next review. Yeah. So if they can secure rent now, try and get future rent reviews resolved. Yeah. A great win is to extend the lease. If you're happy there, they need leverage to the bank, and one of the ways they can leverage the negotiation in a rent discussion is by you maybe tagging on an extra year on the lease. Now, if that suits you, because you're quite happy to be there. You know, if the circumstances are right, the P&L is working, you can kind of map out your rent. I like RPIs. I mean, I like RPI rents. I like to know where I am, how much it's going to go by, capped and collared, and you don't fall out with anyone.
Yeah, no, it's true.
You don't fall out with anyone. You know where they are. It's a business arrangement. I spent years arguing with tenants when I was in Green King about, you know, why are you complaining now? you know, I mean, you knew it was a tied lease. You knew what the rent structure was going to be, and of course, it's not worked, and it's all somehow all my fault, you know. And sometimes it is, and people haven't done their jobs to support a tenant, and sometimes just things go wrong, and you'll always blame the landlord.
Yeah, I think you learn as life goes on. I think in the early days you fall in love with the premises and you just want it, and you'll almost do anything, and then later, it comes back to bite you in the arse. And you realise, to be fair, Richard, who we were chatting about earlier, who you know is my landlord in the town centre, perfectly logical, rational human being. He's a businessman, easy to deal with. He looks at it, he goes, zero revenue, you know, whatever the deal is, we'll come to a deal that kind of reflects that, and it's fine. And it's you know, again, it's like we haven't even agreed yet, because at the minute I'm like, look, I don't know when I can reopen, and I don't know when I can reopen, what that will look like. So we know we'll do a deal. We'll sit around the table and we'll thrash it out later. And to be fair to the council, they've been very good in the fact they've not hassled me. I've kind of put my point of view, they've put their point of view, and I said, look, let's reconfigure when we know a little bit more. And also, let's sit around a table. Let's not try and organise this by Zoom, because much as Zoom has taken over a lot of people's lives, I like sitting face to face with somebody and just tell the truth, show them the numbers, you know, chew the fat, and be pretty.
Yeah, there are no numbers. I mean, you know, I look at our cash burn on a monthly basis, and you're thinking, well, I've got 420 staff furloughed. Yeah. I have got a skeleton team still working, but I've got security costs. We've got pest control issues, which you have to ramp up, particularly in London. Yeah. You know, because soon as the humans aren't around, you've really got to defend your properties against things like that. You know, you've got concerns. We were worried about things like riots at the beginning and stuff like that, and burglaries. Actually, touch wood, that's been okay. We've had one fire, which was in a bin yard, so that's okay. You know, but you've got this cash burn anyway.
This is cash presumably, so you haven't needed to go for a CBILS app, but you had money that I guess was ring fenced or earmarked for further.
Well, we don't have money ring fenced for a pandemic.
No, exactly.
No, we have reserves. Yeah, we did have reserves. We've got a development on site, and we've slowed that down a little bit. But you know, we are. You know, we were in pretty good shape.
Yeah,
pretty good shape into it. Not in perfect shape, and you know, at the end of the day, you can't last forever. No, nobody can. I mean, any business that can last this for too long was probably sat on too much cash at the beginning of it all.
Well, I think the backdrop coming into this was the perfect storm scenario. We're going to have a helicopter fly overhead in a minute, so we'll see how the mic copes. But you know, you had tough trading conditions on the high street, didn't you? Or, you know, in general, you had high costs.
We had a period of stasis for 3 years.
You had Brexit. You had the multiple elections. Then we had a very wet, stormy kind of winter. So for us, you know, it's the most challenging. I'll let that fly over. Okay, so they're making sure that we're stood apart, Chris.
That's all right.
That's what it is.
Yeah. No, it looks military actually.
Is it?
Doesn't it?
I'll turn it.
Yeah.
I'll turn it.
No, you're right. I mean, you know, we've had everything conspiring against us. But you know what? That's the good thing about hospitality. I mean, retail seems to be extremely fragile. I mean, years ago I got involved. It was when they were changing licensing laws, and I got to one of these working parties, you know, where government do these focus groups. They've already decided what they're going to do, but they can tell everybody that they consulted. And I was at one in London.
Sounds like my meetings. But
and you know, there's a coffee station there, and you get all the kind of civil servants. And one guy said to the other, and they stood in front of me, and he said, pretty much set what's going to happen anyway. And the other guy said, yeah. He said, the good thing about this lot is they're self-healing. And it was a very interesting statement I heard. And I sort of walked back, and I remember the coffee cup was shaking in the saucer. I was that bloody angry. You know, and pubs and hospitality has always been self-healing. You know, you kind of chuck stuff at us, be it taxation, be it regulation, be it licensing, be it, as I said, PRS increases, bids, fees, all this nonsense that, you know, we have to wade through. And yes, some of these things are very beneficial to us and useful, and some things are just taxed by the back door. And we just deal with it. But this we can't deal with this now. Yeah. We can't deal with this, and we are so vulnerable to it.
Yeah. Yet, like I said, such an important part of the reason to live on planet Earth, and
absolutely. If it defines us who we are, I don't want to live my rest of my life in my living room.
No, 100%. No, I think we need to be released.
As nice as it is with my wife and my daughter, it's wonderful. And having the time with my daughter, now being homeschooled, is lovely.
Yeah, how old's your daughter?
She's 13.
Okay, so I have an 11 and 12-year-old at home as well, which has been fun. And my wife's a teacher. She's gone back to work a couple of days a week to help out because the finances are a little stretched from the business perspective. So I've got them for the next couple of days actually, but it's been good. It's been good to spend a bit of time with them. Conscious of time, which we're going to run out of very shortly, so you've got to go. Reopening then, you said we're nervous about it. You're going to kind of open one first. I saw some statistics. I'm interviewing Carl from, I think it's CGA, but the guys behind the stats of the industry. There's a lot of people. It's not just a case of saying, okay, you can open on either the 22nd or the 4th or whenever it is, and the industry will bounce back. Most operators are saying that not only they won't, but they can't open all their venues on the same day. But there doesn't seem to be a rush to just go, okay, great, here we go, we're straight into profitability. What are the considerations for you around reopening and your biggest kind of concerns, I guess?
It's David. I'm seeing him. The biggest concern is going to be cash, the cash burn in the first couple of weeks. So we're modelling every site's P&L. I'm not prepared to just sit back and open and just burn cash, because then it's going to put jobs at risk. So we can't do that. We've got to get the right level of investment that we are going to invest, and we are going to make the environments as safe as we possibly can. Because if we get that wrong, that's going to be a problem for us. So we have to make sure that we get the right sites open. We're going to focus on the big garden sites, because everyone knows that gardens are going to make people feel safer. We've just had a survey completed across our business with Service Monitor Group, so we've talked to nearly 3,000 guests on our own database. And interesting point that was made is that our guests are not frightened of us; they're frightened of each other.
Really?
Yeah, which is a great statement actually. And actually, when asked about 2 meters or 1 meters, wherever the government regulate, people want 2 meters more than one.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting dynamic. And what do you do about that? Now, by having that in place means that it'll make the regulation environment around social distancing slightly easier for us if it's 1 meter. But we still got to be conscious of the fact people will want space between each other. You can't it's not a license, just suddenly pack them all in again. Yeah. So we've got to be mindful of that. So we're going to take a phased approach. We're going to open 5 sites over 5 days, and we're going to take a breath. And we're going to see how they are. The whole of the senior management team are going to be working in the business alongside the managers. We're just constantly going to be talking to people. And that'll be nationwide. So we're going to really scattergun across, there's one in London that we picked out in the first tranche. Down here, we'll pick a couple. We've got good garden sites on the south coast, so there'll be a couple more down here that will go first. And and then we'll just listen. We'll talk to people and see how people are feeling. There'll be a huge amount of lessons learned. We've been training our staff now for 12 weeks. So we run leadership programs. We've been driving up our specialist training. We use Flow for our induction training. We've brought our Flow up to date. Nearly every team member now has fully completed their induction. Ours is quite intense because of all the beer knowledge you expect from people.
Yeah.
So we've got our people ready. We've got to get people in the right mindset. We've done a huge amount of welfare support for our teams, because people have earned 80% pay and nothing to do for 12 weeks. And so we've been concerned, how people be filling their time. It's not for us to tell them how to fill their time, but we're just keeping an eye.
Yeah.
That people haven't, people's health is okay, mental health, physical health. We've been doing mental health first aid training with got a few of our more senior management in the business at operational level. So, we've got lots to do. And I feel confident that we're in as good a place as we can be. We need the guests to come. We need our guests to be patient and supportive and understanding that we might not get it right sometimes. People will forget a bit of the protocol, the new protocols. They're having to relearn their jobs now. But I do think that there's going to be some opportunity out there in the long term. We're looking at potential fundraising right now as well. So obviously, if the opportunity presents itself, you need to be ready.
Yeah, it's bound to be some, I think, isn't it?
But
I think it's inevitable.
the last thing I want to do is lose anybody along the way. My fear right now with furlough, and I'm speaking generally, not about my business particularly, is an awful lot of people currently on furlough who are probably unemployed.
Absolutely.
They just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
And
hundreds of thousands, I would say.
I would say you're probably right.
Yeah.
And I need to make sure that I work as damn hard as I can for my team, and myself and my business partner committed in March when we shut the business ahead of when Boris told us to close. I was pretty angry the way he played it on the Monday night because we saw trade collapse on that Tuesday morning. To me, that was just what's the expression? Being too unkind to Boris. A coward in a panic.
It was an odd one, wasn't it?
It was an odd discussion. Why not, just pick up the phone, speak to Kate at your guest, would say, we need to jump, we'll jump together. We'll tell guests not to come to you, but I'm telling you guys to close. If we'd have been able to close now and get it ready, get the business ready, we'd have been in such a better place. Quite a few operators didn't do themselves any good that week by fiercely, resisting having to close. We closed early. As soon as I knew that furlough was coming and we knew what support packages were in place, I didn't want the biggest problem, and I've had this debate with people about when you should have closed. If I'd have closed on Tuesday morning or Tuesday night, I would have panicked my team. I would have terrified them. I needed to wind the business down. We closed on a Thursday afternoon, and it was the right thing to do. It was a gentle closure. We had we communicated with all of our team members every single day during that week, and we saw every single team member on that Friday. So we closed gently. We're going to reopen in the same way, gently and in a supportive way for our teams.
Yeah. Okay. And what? Lastly, government support changes to the package. I mean, they keep every time they get asked a question, they come out and say, "Look, we've given you CBILS, we've given you grants, even though 71% of the hospitality sector doesn't qualify for them."
Wow.
What more can they do?
Furlough is good. Furlough is probably the best thing the government has done.
Yeah.
I also think that the Chancellor is. I feel very confident when he's got his hand on the tiller.
Yeah.
So I think that has been good. Let's not kid ourselves. The government have not given us CBILS. All the government have done is agreed a package of guarantee and support to the banks.
Yeah. Who will make a decent level of cash out of it.
The banks will give us the money based on the level of guaranteed support they will get from government.
Yeah.
Nobody has given anybody anything yet.
Exactly.
All it is, this is borrowings. The grants, I would say, have been very good. We did qualify for a couple of grants.
Did you? Yeah,
we
were cunningly, I think we were 2K out in both directions. We were 50, it was between 15 and 51, isn't it? And I had one at 13 and one at 53, and this one was mine. Well, I didn't do very well out those.
The one benefit of buying very small, tired, underdeveloped pubs is that we had reasonably decent RV values on a couple of sites, so we did okay on that one. So that's been good.
Yeah.
But and having a business rates holiday is good.
Anything else you need though? VAT comes up a lot. Any other thoughts on something we need as a sector?
Reduce VAT Monday to Thursday. We need to borrow. We all work very hard as a population in this country to flatten Boris's sombrero. You and I have a sombrero, and that sombrero is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We need them. We need Joe Public to come and see us Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, please. Please flatten the trading patterns. We don't have the capacities on the key shifts. So come and see us Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night, please. Make that your Saturday night because it protects the shifts of the teams that are working. 100%. It flattens the trade. We don't have the capacity. And if we can move, because we don't have the capacity, we can move staff hours from the weekends into the midweeks. If you come and support us in the midweek, and we can protect jobs.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Certainly, most of the models we're looking at are, at best opening 5 days, not 7.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because it means we can run on one team, whereas being open 7 days a week from 8 in the morning till 11 means we need 3 teams. But the problem with that is that I lose 60% of my team, and then I need them back in April.
Yeah, and we need to articulate that really carefully.
That's heartbreaking.
And the thing is, we know. I'm worried now about credibility. The messaging from government. That's all wobbled a bit. Now, people were doing as they told in the first few weeks. It all seems to have wandered and wobbled a bit, and I'm worried about that now because there was a window of opportunity where government could have said, "Look, if you're working from home, if you're having a friends' night out in the pub, go on a Wednesday. Yeah. You're going to get a table. You're going to get a good deal probably. And look, if you're working from home." You're going to rock out of bed at kind of 8:15. The boss will see you at Zoom at 9 o'clock. You'll look all right. You'll pull it off.
True.
Make Wednesday new Saturday. Flatten our sombrero now.
Yeah, well, that's a good message. I think if we can get that out to the public and say, what can you do? Is come out on a Tuesday or Wednesday. It'll be quieter. It helps everybody out.
It helps everybody out. But the thing is, it protects the jobs as well because then we can stay open 7 days. We can spread the shifts out and protect everybody's income.
It would be good.
It won't make any more money for us.
No, I don't think we're going to make any money this year. Whatever.
No, we're not going to make any money this year.
Can we we keep the team employed.
But it will protect the teams.
And that would be great. And that does mean that next summer for us, certainly we're very seasonal with our outside spaces. But yeah, if we can keep the teams employed. Right, look, I'm conscious that you need to move on.
No
so
worries.
thank you for sparing the time. Where should people go to follow either you personally or the business? Is there a particular social channel?
On LinkedIn. I'm dreadfully old-fashioned when it comes to social media. I keep getting told off, but
send you a letter.
I do a bit, just carry a pigeon or Morse code. Right. No, I mean I'm on LinkedIn, so just come and tap me up on LinkedIn. And
you haven't got a photo on there, Kris? I don't think, have you?
No, I don't.
I always think if people
scary.
don't put a photo on there, they don't even use it. But you do actually use it.
I do use LinkedIn a bit, but I will actually. I keep being told off to make myself more accessible. So I normally rant and rave on Facebook, so I don't share that too often.
Well, I'll put a link through to that on the show notes for this as well, but I'll also link through to Brewhouse and Kitchen. But yeah, thanks for sparing the time, and good luck finding a way through. And you're only down the road, so we'll meet next time. We'll meet in your place and have a pint of craft ale.
I keep saying, at the end of the day, all the operators in this area have got to know each other really well. I was talking to Ben yesterday from Lost Paradise, and he was saying how nice it is now that we're all talking, communicating, and I can just feel a really big beer coming on.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah,
and it'd be quite nice.
End of pandemic party.
Exactly. Right.
Thanks, Kris. Appreciate it.
Okay, I've popped a link to Kris's LinkedIn channel in the show notes at humansofhospitality.co.uk, as well as a link through to his business. Please check them out, and whilst you're there, why not sign up for a weekly newsletter from me? It's a simple little form on the website, and I promise not to send you any rubbish. You'll just get an email once a week with a little update on the latest guests and any special news or info I think it makes sense to share. Okay, thanks for listening. I will be back with a new episode on Saturday morning. If you could just do me a favour, please pick up the device you're listening on, find the podcast and hit that 5-star review button. It makes me smile, and that will make you feel good too. Thanks.